Everyone, it's Allison here, also known as Lasan Faye, and today I'm here to talk to you about some of the bullet journal supplies that I use or have previously used in my time planning. And so I figured what better place to start than with the books that I do all of my planning in. So I'm going to go from smallest to largest and start with the one on top. And the one on top, this is a traveler's notebook from Chic Sparrow. I really like it. And I got this one recently to use while traveling. And I have it filled with some traveler's notebooks from Bookfell Studio. I'll include a link to the store down below. So a couple dot grids, some blank pages for sketching, some expense tracking, and then this right here is kind of my on-the-go calendar checker. So this is a weekly supplement to the A6 Hobonichi, and originally I got this to do my editorial calendar work on, and it became a little too small. There's just not quite enough space for me. But I really liked the layout, and that's actually what motivated me to get a Hobonichi in the long run. However, this book does not actually fit within the passport-sized traveler's notebook that I have. So the way that I got it to attach was I just threw on some binder clips that then threaded around the string for me. And so that's how I did that. And then I have a little bit of a wallet in the back here, as well as when I was traveling abroad, I kept my passport here, and I then kept my money here, and this kind of acted as my wallet while I was traveling about. So the next little notebook that I have, this is a pocket Leuchtturm, and it is a soft cover. And initially what I started using it for was to write down my shopping lists, and just kind of have it as a quick inbox. And I attempted to do meal planning in here, which you can see how well that went. I now keep my reading list in here. I think I can cross one more of these off, but I haven't checked yet. The next two pages I'm going to skip, but I track flights as well as gift ideas that I have for my friends. And of course, my Tombow color chart. This is actually set up in the same way that the huge 96 Tombow holder is set up, so that way I know where each color is within it, because I actually don't keep it with the brush tip up, I keep it with the brush tip down, so that way more of the ink is settled into the brush tip, because that's the end I use more often. And yeah, then just, you know, still some shopping lists, challenges, and expense and travel information for my trip abroad. Then the next book I have, this was my first bullet journal. This is a squared Moleskine, and I had a flip through for this bullet journal. On my channel, I'll include a link to the video down below. And this bullet journal is what made me fall in love with the bullet journal system. And yeah, so I have been a fan. You can see how much I beat this bullet journal up over the course of the time that I had it, but I love it dearly, and this, yeah, it's my baby. Enough said about that. Then, of course, I have my second bullet journal, which was a Leuchtturm dotted grid notebook. This is also the first bullet journal that you guys saw me in on this channel. However, I finished it back in March, and yeah, I also put this one through a bit of the ringer, but again, I love it. So pretty, but definitely I use this one. Then, of course, I have my current bullet journal, which is an official bullet journal in emerald from the Leuchtturm brand. And actually, I prefer the regular Leuchtturms to the official bullet journal, just because I like the way the table of contents is set up better. But yeah, I'm currently about a third of the way through this one. You can kind of see it from the bookmarks there. And like all three of these notebooks, I do highly recommend. There's just not much to say there. There is a reason though why the Leuchtturms do get like the most publicity, I think, on YouTube. Then of course, finally, as my final method of planning, as I've shown you guys previously, is my Hobonichi. And this is just how I take care of myself and do some schedule planning for my week as it comes up. So if you want to know more about how I'm using my Hobonichi, I have a link in the description. I'll have a link to that video down in the description below. So that's it for the books. Now let's talk about the pens. All the various pens I use. So starting with the actual pens, actually no, let's start with the pencil. I do use a pencil on occasion for when I'm sketching some things out or if I just want to put some place markers, but it's actually not that common for me to use pencil in my bullet journal just because I hate the fact that pencil rubs off everywhere. I had converted to just using pen even on scratch work for college courses like physics and engineering and mathematics. I do all of my scratch work in pen there just because I hate it when I go back and like half of my pencil is rubbed off. So I use it on occasion, pretty much erase it almost immediately with either the eraser that's on the pencil or with an additional eraser. And nowadays the pencil is more just for when I do art. Okay, so pens that are actually pens. First I have the newest pen in my collection, which is the Pilot High-Tech Coletto. And I have this filled with 5 different inks: red, purple, blue, black, and green, which are inks that I use regularly, and they're all in 0.3 millimeter. I just like the way that it looks. I like the crispness of how thin everything is. And this is probably one of my favorite pens to use for taking notes, just because usually I write in black ink, but occasionally I need to highlight something or underline something, and I can just push down a different color and it switches over pretty easily. So again, this is kind of sort of what I use for taking notes, not so much a regular planning pen, but I do occasionally use it within my planning supplies. All right, my next pen is my Lamy Safari. This was the first pen that I ever got, and I currently have it inked up with Noodler's purple ink. And this is the extra fine nib. I like how thin the nib is and how pretty the purple of the pen case itself is, as well as the purple of the ink. Yeah, I was really happy. This was my first ever fountain pen, and I'm really glad that I went with it. It's nice, it's light, it actually writes in my bullet journal really well. It also writes in the Hobonichi really well. So yeah, no complaints at all about this pen. Then I have my second fountain pen, and that is my TWSBI 580 Mini in blue. And I have it currently filled up with Pilot Iroshizuku Ajisai. This is, however, a medium nib, I believe, or broad nib. I think it's medium. And that's because originally when I got it, what the ink I was filling it up with was the Diamine Shimmer ink, the Blue Pearl. And that also looks really, really gorgeous. And I wanted the broader nibs. That way I could see all the variants in the shimmer ink. However, I also like using the broad nib with the Ajisai because it just brings about like all the variants that come about from the ink. So that is it though in terms of the pens I use. So my regular everyday writing in my bullet journal is actually done with a Sakura Micron pen in 01. I know you guys can't really see that on this pen, and that's because I've actually used this pen a lot. In fact, the number is no longer on the cap. It's just rubbed off, and of course a lot of the ink along the sides has rubbed off from just where it's been sitting in my hand. But I like this because it is a nice thin tip, and I've actually had this pen now, this particular one, for I want to say going on 3 years, but I didn't start using it like extremely regularly outside of my Zentangle work until last April, and now it's the pen I use all the time. But originally when I started doing Zentangles, which is the other aspect of this channel, this was the pen I started with. And I liked all the detail that I could get from it, and yeah, like no complaints. Of course, I showed you the black ink. I do in fact have other color inks in the Sakura Micron pens, and I will sometimes use these other colors in my bullet journal for the sake of giving myself notes. And the reason why I started using the Microns instead of, say, the Staedtler Tri-Plus Fineliners, which I've also used and I will show here in a second. The reason why I do this is because these are archival quality color, whereas the Staedtler Tri-Plus Fineliners can fade over time. So that's just why I have that set up the way I do. And speaking of, since I've already mentioned them, the Staedtler Tri-Plus Fineliners, which I do dearly love. I use them a lot more often in my first 2 bullet journals than I do recently. Nowadays, I just use these for creating borders or some dates on my weeklies. But otherwise, I don't use these a huge amount in my bullet journal anymore. Though I suppose people would say, but you're writing your weekly titles and your borders between your dailies with these. You're actually using it quite a bit. So I guess I do still use them, just not to the severity that I used to. Because I used to do more time tracking in my bullet journal itself. And this is how I filled them in. And sometimes I'd also do my notes to myself in these Tri-Plus Fineliners instead of the Microns. So that is that color. Then, of course, where would I be if I didn't also at least try to use the Faber-Castell Pit Artist pens in size S? And this I will occasionally use. This is not a pen I use regularly in my bullet journal. Just sometimes if I can't find a color I want in the archival quality colors I have, this is the one I go to. Just because I like this blue. It's a nice, very calm blue. This is the Indanthrine blue, or number 247. For the Pit Artist pens. I really wish they did more of their colors in the S size and not just in the brush size, because otherwise I might have actually picked up more of these. And so the other main pen that you guys have seen me regularly use is the Staedtler pigment liner. And this is what I use to actually draw any hard, solid lines that I need in my bullet journal. So like on my Calendex or dividers on my weekly page. You will also see me use various sizes of them whenever I do my Zen Doodle with me videos. For the Zen Doodle with me video, just to give you guys an idea, I generally use a 0.2 millimeter tip for most of the tangle drawing, and any of the shading in I do, I use a 0.8 millimeter tip. Just so that you guys know how that all works out. But in my bullet journal, for as regularly as I use it, I use a 0.5 millimeter. And that's just my personal preference. All right, so a couple pens I forgot to mention that are actually pens. So one you see me regularly use is Zentangle is this Jelly Roll in white. And I love this. This pen makes me so happy, and for various reasons. And that is because when I started my first bullet journal, I didn't have access to the Staedtler Tri Plus fine liners. They just weren't sold in the area near me. But I was trying to find like a source of colorful pens that would make me happy. And so I got this Jelly Roll pack that had a ton of colors in it. And it just kind of took me back to my childhood, because I definitely collected Jelly Rolls when I was younger. They were some of my favorite gel pens. I don't know if any of you like went on the huge gel pen kick. It was like in the early 2000s, I want to say. But I loved these pens. And so nowadays, whenever I use them, it makes me feel very nostalgic and reminds me of some of the happier times in my youth. So that's why I love these. And I loved being able to use them in my first bullet journal. At least the colored ones. Nowadays, I really only use the white. But the colored ones, it was nice to have them because it provided me a way of seeing priorities and to do some of my time tracking without like having to have a ton of supplies. So a lot of the supplies is actually collected over a couple years. Okay. Now we get into more of the marker highlighter area. So, like any good traditional bullet journalist, one of the things I use when planning, in particular in my Hobonichi, I use the Zebra mild liners. And these are so gorgeous. I originally was like, oh my gosh, these are so overhyped. Fine, I'll get some just to try them. There's a reason why they're overhyped. There is like a huge reason why they're overhyped. They are so pretty, and I do not have words to fully describe how much I love these. I use these in my Hobonichi. I will occasionally use them in my bullet journal. I will also use these for class when I'm taking notes. So it's really nice to use these. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there before I start composing a poem to them. And also, the other huge bullet journal supply that you see everywhere is, of course, the Tombow dual brush pens. And I do have the full set, as indicated by my color chart earlier. I love using these. This is how I add a lot of color to my bullet journal. The 243 is one of the main colors I use right now, just because I feel it complements the emerald of the Lloyd's Charm really well and provides a good highlighting color to go with it that's still in the same color family. I'm also working on my brush pen techniques, and yeah, coming from about 6 months ago to now, it's a huge difference. So if you are just starting out on using brush pens, give it time. Like, seriously, I got so frustrated at first because I'm like, oh, I want this to be pretty like so-and-so's brushwork. No, 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 no. Take your time, learn the techniques, figure out what weights you need to be using, and breathe with it. That's the advice I'm going to offer, because I consider myself a huge newbie when it comes to brush lettering. But because I enjoyed the brush lettering so much, other huge pen that I use regularly in my bullet journal, because this is now how I write my days of the week, is the Tombow Inosuke Pen, or Inosuke, I'm sorry, I should actually pronounce that correctly. This pen is a calligraphy pen, traditionally used for writing kanji, or hiragana, or katakana. And I now use it to write my headers on my bullet journal. So, for example, let me find a day that doesn't have too much with it. So like this. And what I like about using this pen to do my days of the week, it actually gives me more brush lettering practice that I don't regularly get. Because I definitely don't have time to sit down every day and be like, and I'm going to practice this letter and this letter, and I'm going to rewrite this quote. Yeah, no, I don't have time for that. Most people don't have time for that. So that's why I do it the way I do. All right. So a couple miscellaneous supplies that I keep on me. First one, hopefully you guys can see this and this won't reflect terribly, is this 6-inch Westcott stainless steel ruler. It has the inches on one side and up through 15 centimeters on the other side. And the reason why I love this one, it's nice and slim and fits perfectly into the back pocket of my bullet journal. So I could set it there, leave it there, move on, wrap up, and be on my way. The other supply, and the final supply that I'm going to talk about today, that not a lot of people talk about, but it does come up on occasion, is a binder clip. You saw earlier I used binder clip to help me insert a book into my passport size traveler's notebook, and hang it on a string. I also used to attach this to the back of my soft cover Leuchtturm, which you can kind of still see the indent there. But what I would do is I'd have it go in just a little bit, clip it on, so that way the ribbon still comes out. And then it's a nice nifty little pen loop on the go. Which, that's really what I use it for. I've also seen people use them to like clip open what page they're on. So that way, if the book that you're using doesn't exactly lay flat, you can force it to lay flat a little bit better, or at least force it to stay open on the page you want. And the thing is this is actually a fairly small binder clip, but I could also use this on my full-size bullet journal and it would work just fine. But primarily I use this for when I need a small little notebook and I'm going to be out of the house and I want my pen to be attached to that notebook. And yeah, so that's all I have for the bullet journal supplies that I use. I'll include links to everything I use down in the description below. And if you like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos from me, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. And in the meantime, I will see you all Sunday for my Zen Doodle with me video. And take care and have fun. Bye.